listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is February 23rd, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, good morning.
Spencer, good morning to you. Geez, this is the earliest record we've had on the books in I don't know how long.
It's been a while.
Yeah, but it's I guess it's a good week to record this early because we are on the eve of a big patch coming out this week. We got a lot of stuff to go over. We got some stuff to maybe get a little fired up about coming into patch week, but it's a combination of exciting and a little scary, I guess, right? Every time you have this big rollover, because there's a lot of stuff changing. It's exciting to check out the new stuff. It can be a little intimidating to navigate the changes. So, that's what we're going to be getting into this week, and certainly for the next several weeks. We're about to enter a whole new kind of rotation and routine with the game. So,
yep,
it's an exciting thing certainly, but it's also a little scary. It's like, well, how is this going to turn out?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think my brain is just so far from WoW at the moment because I'm at the table with the employer. We're coming up on a strike deadline. There's a lot of stuff happening in my work life that has just occupied my brain that I very much am like, oh yeah, Tuesday is new content. I should try and find time this week to be sure I get in and do new content stuff. And next week when we roll into season 2 is actually we're counting down the last 5 days before potentially a strike would happen. And you're like, oh, okay, well, how much time am I going to be, at the table versus able to play WoW? So my brain is in two different places, but I'll caveat the episode with that at the top. But I will say that I'm very excited for the new content. I'm excited for what we see out of the new raid. I am curious about what the tuning is going to feel like for this raid. I feel like they are trying to iterate on season 1 with season 2, especially with what we saw with what's happening with Mythic Plus and Mythic Plus scaling, as well as accessibility of gear, which we've talked about on our previous episodes pretty in depth. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. But this past week in WoW, I'll kick off with this. We did do a one-night clear. It did happen. We went in and did our one-night clear. I had my Evoker in for the first 4 bosses, and then I was in on my Druid for the rest of it. And it was not super smooth, but it was all in one night, which made me happy. So that was good to see. That was definitely a good news night for raiding.
That's a good feeling, going out on a high note for sure. Yeah,
and it freed up Monday night to be able to deal with other things in life, which was nice. And then we had a Tuesday reset, and I hopped into doing keys with my raid leader and some other people, and we did. Well, they'd already run one key, and then I hopped in for the second, and the second key went really smooth, and we hopped in, we were doing a Siege of Borealis. We had killed the first boss. We were pulling the horseman that happens after that, and our raid leader, who at the time was on a tanking alt, DC'd. And we were like, oh, shit, all right. And then when he tried to log back in, it said, your account has been suspended for 2 weeks. And he was like, oh. So
was he playing Rumble on an Android emulator at the time?
So he sought more clarity, obviously, from the email that you get from it, and it basically just said due to their community guidelines that they have in place. And so I was like, what have you said in public somewhere inside WoW that potentially could do this? And what he described as the most recent thing, which was a couple weeks ago or something, he was inside a group with there was a pre-made. It was a Mythic Plus. It was Missatir Nasaith. It was a pre-made group, and that pre-made group was not performing very well on the first boss. And he made a comment like, "I hope the rest of the key isn't going to be like this," or something like that, which apparently triggered everyone in that pre-made group to start essentially taking shots at him. And so there was this kind of banter back and forth between them. Nothing offensive, nothing massively sweary or, any racism or any horrible stuff was said on either side of the table. in this, but there was banter back and forth throughout the rest of the key, and the key ended, and basically, he left. But that was the only sort of negative interaction that they had sort of had in that situation over the past couple weeks. So he like, I wonder whether or not the 4 pre-made people all reported him, and so he then hit a threshold, which then give him the boot. So he's been appealing it. We'll see what happens with it. But worst case scenario, it means he couldn't play until Tuesday of season 2 start would be when he was able to get back online. So it's not terrible. It's just one of those like, darn kind of situations.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, maybe, community
guidelines are there for a reason. Like I totally get it. I'm not saying this shouldn't have happened or whatever happened. Like let the appeal process will do whatever it needs to do to, that there's certainly a lot of Reddit stories out there and whatnot you can go and look up where like 3 people got banned for different periods of time for the same offense in the same group, and one of them appealed and it was overturned immediately. Another one appealed and it was like they reduced it by half, and then the third one appealed, and they threatened them that if they appeal again, they're going to get permanently banned on their account. And you're like, okay, like these are very different reactions. So I'm like, it's the process. It is what it is. He's very much taking it in stride because he's like, all right, well, I can still do like my prep for research and everything else like that for the team, and he can raid lead through watching a Discord stream if he wants to for that. There wasn't like gear thresholds that were incredibly particular that he needed to get over this period of time. It was just about gearing alts and having fun playing the game. So I don't feel like he was massively upset over it in the sense of like, oh god, this is the end of the world, but certainly an inconvenience and certainly not what he would be aiming to do with his time over this time. But I appreciated his calmness in handling the situation when it came to that.
Here's the question: did you report him for leaving the key?
No, I did not.
Okay,
I did not report him for leaving the key. No.
I mean, I guess keep in mind, like, Microsoft gutted the CS department. Was at the beginning of last year, I want to say. It was like shortly after the deal was closed. They laid off, I don't know, the entire customer service department was sort of the reports were coming out at the time. And yeah, I don't know. Anecdotally, I obviously had a weird interaction with an account action and customer service back in December, and we've heard some other anecdotal stuff like that. It just kind of makes you wonder. I mean, Blizzard customer service used to be kind of like the gold standard, man. Back in the early WoW days, if you had an account problem or something, dude, they were responsive. They wouldn't always fix your problem, but they were really responsive,
I remember having, them log into the game masters, log into the game and like send you a message in character, and it was all, you could totally RP the whole thing. It was great. I definitely enjoyed those interactions, and those do not exist anymore at all. Yeah. Oh, well, anyway, so that was Tuesday, and so that kind of just, was like, all right, well, I guess that's the end of keys for that night. And then I didn't do a ton of keys outside of the ones that I got done that night. And I've just been busy with work for most of the week. So we're going into raid tonight, and hopefully it's another one night clear and everything goes smooth. I have been keeping my eye on PTR, and we'll talk about a bit of that today because they put out nerfs to classes after they finalized and had a release client for their PTR, which has also been kind of spicy for someone who was like, hey, I'm considering switching to an Evoker main. And they're like, hey, here's 2 more rounds of nerfs since you've made that decision. And you're like, okay, great. So yeah, I basically wanted to switch off of Boomkin because as much as I love my Druid and I love Boomkin, it has been the bottom tier DPS for the past entire season. And they weren't really addressing the top tier DPS. And they haven't really helped Boomkin that much. They've done some improvements here and there, but you just consistently can see a problem of this is not enough to actually raise them into the middle of the pack place where they would need to be competitive inside of any kind of mythic raiding scene. So that's a problem. And then you look at Evoker for PTR and you're like, great, Evoker's in a great place. It's up there. It's one of those, enhancement shaman style classes that was sitting towards the top of the meters, able to perform. And I was like, okay, maybe this time I'll make the switch. I'll switch up to Evoker. It's a play style that I've started to enjoy for augmentation Evoker. And then they're like, yeah, we're going to nerf the tier set and we're going to nerf this. And you're like, okay, I mean, they're still okay. Like they're still within a reasonable range. Maybe this could still work. And they're like, and we're going to nerf them even more. And you're like, oh, okay, well, if we're already on that train, I don't know what this is going to look like once we get into the patch. So that plan is like still tentative as to what happens with Augmentation Evoker. We'll see just how badly they continue to treat that class, because I don't want to make a swap from one. Boomkin's looking like it's going to be okay. It might end up middle of the pack. We don't know. To Evoker, which was top and then might now be towards bottom. We don't know once all the dust settles. So we'll see what happens with me with raiding. I just know that my Druid's ready to go, and I'm working on my Evoker, and I'll just keep working on my Evoker until we hit raid time, and we'll just see where things are at.
Can I interest you in a Feral Druid?
No, because there's so much melee, there's no room for them. That's the problem.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. We'll get into that a little bit later. Yeah. But actually, for me, last like week of patch, right? Not the last week of season 1 technically, but like practically, it was. I kind of was looking at it that way because I want to break this week from endgame. So I just told everybody, like, on the team, this is our last week in Nerebar Palace. Like, we're going to do achievements, and then we're off the rest of the week, and we're going to take patch week off, do all the new stuff, go hang out in the new zone. Let's do dungeons. If there's, let's check out the new dungeon, grab people from the team, whatever. If there's reasons to do dungeons, then we'll do them, we'll talk about it, but no scheduled raid. So we went in and did the achievements. We got them done in like an hour.
Nice.
They were fine, but the only one I thought was really cool was Nexus Princess, because you have to click the brazier in front of the door, and then she kills whoever clicked it, and then the fight starts, and then she has like a minute long or like 40-second long buff or something, like a kill streak buff. And you have to keep that going until she dies. So you have to sacrifice somebody to her. No, you can only click the brazier once. Then you have to like die to mechanics. So,
oh God. Okay.
Yeah. So it was pretty fun. That was a fun one, because it's like, okay, who's going to sacrifice next? Right. You run into the portal, you stand in the stuff, whatever.
So I guess the portals would be I was going to say at a certain point, you wonder if gearing would become a problem if you're all 639 or something. It's like right. On normal, right? I'm talking about on normal difficulty, like standing in those like you can get hit by multiple daggers when you're that geared on a normal difficulty character. So I was like, that might be tricky,
we were doing on normal. Yeah,
the portals would be the thing. You could definitely sacrifice someone to portals pretty regularly, or have them stand in the bad pie slices.
Right, yeah, you don't get any portals during the intermission, and the intermission is pretty long, but also, like, the kill streak buff on her is long enough, and again, being geared up, having circlets, and having all the cantrip items from raid and stuff, like, it made, she died in 2 minutes.
I was going to say, the fight would be very fast, yeah.
We only had to refresh it, like, three times or whatever, so, or I guess 3 times total to refresh, so that was good. The rest of the achievements, like, I don't know, man, they didn't really grab me. They were okay. My favorite one ever was that amalgam boss, that chimera thing in Old Deer, that had like the 3 heads, and it was sort of like a patchwork type fight, but it hit the tanks really hard, and the achievement was everybody had to get hit with the tank mechanic in the raid. That was super fun.
Was that Fetid Devourer? Is that what that was?
Yeah, I think that's what it was called. Yeah, nothing will ever top that one for me. These were just okay. I think even the people that really liked the achievements were kind of not impressed by these, but whatever, we got them done. The mount you get is cool. It's like one of those bat spider mosquito things, and it's pretty small, which I like small mounts because it makes me feel like I'm going faster. So that was cool. It's worth doing. It's kind of a tradition. We always do it at the end of the season. Got some keys in just for the hell of it. Just why not? And also my rogue buddy still was missing 2 teleports. The charmed life of my rogue buddy. What a lucky lad he is. He took so much of the season off for personal reasons and whatever. He had life stuff going on, and it happens. Like it happens to everybody now and again, And he missed a ton of season 1. Like he missed the whole meaty part of the season when we were like gearing up and kind of getting over the hump, so to speak, with the season. He was gone for all that. And so he came, he's been playing the last month or so, but he was like, I want to get dungeons, but I don't really have time now. Can we do them next week? Whatever. So I mentioned the show last week. We got him Keystone Hero. We got him over 2,500. This week he needed 2 teleports still. He didn't have Miss Eterna Scythe and Grim Batol, which is just weird because Miss Eterna Scythe is pretty easy, and I've been dragging people through Grim Batol all season. And we did a couple keys with sort of the regular crew, and people finished up their vaults, and then we re-rolled some keys, and the keys lined up, and it was like, hey man, log on and we'll get you your teleports. It's like, could you imagine just being in this position, like somebody like is just looking out for you, and it's like, here, come get your teleports done. Like he's so lucky. It makes me sick as the person helping him with all of his good luck. But I'm glad we got him done for him. It was fun. I mean, like 10s are just silly at this point in our gear and with the amount of practice we have with these dungeons, so it's no problem, to help somebody out with that. So that was cool.
Yeah, I want to roll back time for folks a bit, because
yes,
you mentioned Fed Devourer, and I want a couple of facts about Fed Devourer.
It was a long time ago.
Right?
Yeah,
it was. So not everyone was around for the first season of BFA and knows what that boss was, but there was an achievement called Trash Mouth All Stars, was the name of the achievement. And the achievement required...
Great achievement, like top tier achievement name, first of all. Like, it's an incredible name for it.
And it was this was a 3-headed boss that patrolled up and down the center of a room with side corridors. It had lots of knockbacks and things that happened. And the walk that it had was this kind of strut, and everyone kept putting the strut to different music that worked really well with the beat of this thing walking. And of course, Trash Mouth All Stars was the name of the achievement, which is also a musical reference as well. So I thought that was really clever. But the achievement itself was requiring everyone to get hit by terrible thrash, one of its attacks, on normal difficulty or higher. And basically you had to like aggro the boss and get hit 3 times with basic attacks to get the thrash to happen. And then someone else would then have to aggro the boss and get hit 3 times. So everyone in your group had to be able to take 3 hits from this boss, which hit very hard. Like, this was a boss that when it actually first came out was mathematically impossible to kill on mythic difficulty when it first came out, because they had done bad math on actually the design aspect of this, and it had to get nerfed partway through a lot of the race and what was happening with it. But it was very amusing to have, like, all your healers would have to like taunt the boss and like get a whole bunch of hits on them and then get the boss taunted off of them, and all your DPS did. And it was a cool achievement. I think it was very well done.
Incredible. It was so fun. That was like the most fun one I can ever remember doing with the team, just setting up the strat for that and watching people go, this thing hits how hard? I mean, it was late in the tier even by then, but still that was one of the harder hitting bosses. So
yes.
Yeah, good times. But I got the achievements wrapped up, got keys. Really, I think nobody in my circle has anything left, any unfinished business with keys. So I spent a little extra time this week wrapping up some season 1 stuff for myself, which I've been talking about doing on the show for a few weeks. I finally did it, including like cleaning up my bank a little bit, cleaning up the inventory, just making some bag space. So I'm ready to go to a new zone where we're undoubtedly going to get a whole bunch of new stuff to carry around. I did that. And I went through and I did all the questing that came in .7, because I just hadn't done it up to this point. I will say I really liked the 11.1 prologue stuff. I really liked.
Prologue stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done. Just in terms of like advancing the story and introducing the characters and just kind of like teasing that mystery that we're investigating, right? Like, the Kieran's Tour stuff I thought was okay, but it didn't blow me away. I don't really have as much of a connection to, I guess, like that space. I did like the fact that I liked how it wraps up, just not to get into like spoiler territory, but I like the fact that it really is like a new beginning for the Kieran Tour. They're trying to take it in a different direction. I like that instead of just sort of, repeating the cycle and everything that we've maybe seen before.
And I'm glad it wasn't just we're going to put down a big stone monument here. There you go. That's our thing. And you're like, that's, I'm glad it wasn't just that sort of situation. Yeah, I'm glad they had a closure period and then a new beginnings. And I was like, that's great. That's what I want.
I like that about it. But I really like the goblin stuff and also stuff with Orwena, like having her come back into the story. Like, we saw her in the the level up campaign and all, but then we haven't really seen too much of the Haranir stuff. So that was I like that more than I was expecting, I guess. And then
I was going to say, while we're on that, big reminder for folks, if you have not completed the main story campaign, you need to complete that before hopping into the new stuff. You have to do the main story campaign. This doesn't necessarily include Kieran Tor and whatnot, but the initial story campaign must be completed for you to be able to enter the new content. So just while we're talking quests, be sure you're finishing those up.
Yeah, it is a warband thing. You don't have to do it on every character, but you have to have done it on your account. You have to do like the main campaign chapters in each zone. Otherwise, you can't start Undermine campaign. So
yeah, so be sure you wrap
keep
that
that
up.
in mind. I'm sure most of our listeners have done this months ago,
Sure.
but if you're just coming back in or whatever, just make sure you got all that done. But the other big thing, like the last big thing on the docket for me for end of season 1 was Zekvir ? All the cool kids have been trying to get Zekvir ? Done in the last couple weeks. So
It's true.
I went Sunday and gave that a shot, and I thought it was fine. I got it in about 31 attempts, I think. I think attempt 31 was when it went down. I did it in prot, which was maybe not like the smoothest way to do it, but it is also the most comfortable for me. I ended up doing it in my raid spec.
Yeah.
Because like the dungeon spec has a lot of control tools that didn't do anything in the fight. Like you can't stun anything really, so that didn't matter. I didn't really go nuts with like consumables and stuff. I think I was running a flask, but I wasn't. My warrior is so high gear, like 638, 639. I wasn't sweating the damage requirements or anything, even with the killing the egg. And I was also running Mad Queen's Mandate, which is the trinket from
Queen
Ansarek. Yeah. Which is like if it it's like a big damage nuke, and if it kills the thing that you nuke, then it resets the cooldown to 1 minute. So as long as I DPS the egg to about 40%, whatever, I could use the trinket and then have it back up for not the next one, but the one after that. So like every other one,
Right.
I had like the trinket, and then so I just had to burst one of them with other stuff like shield charge or whatever. So like I got the dance down, and then it was like, by about pull 11, I was starting to get frustrated because I'm like, okay, I see everything this has to offer. I'm just like I'm not playing perfectly enough to line everything up. So yeah, it was like. By the middle, I was like, I just want to be done with this. Like, I see what the point is here, whatever. But then it felt good to get it done. It was like, I mean, I would say it was Mage Tower-esque, but it felt easier than any of the Mage Towers did when they were like relevant. Not when you were like at the end of Legion and super powered up, and then Mage Tower just falling over.
Yeah,
but it was like it was in that vein, but maybe a little easier.
Yeah, the way I described it early on when I was doing it is this is good practice to get you ready for a boss mechanics in a raid. That's what it is. It was one of those things where you're like, oh,
yeah,
here's
true.
a boss that has 2 phases, because on the question mark, it has 2 phases. Yep. And you have to learn the mechanics in phase 1. And as long as you do the mechanics and you meet the damage check for the egg, you're fine. It might take you 6 or 7 minutes to do it, but you'll be fine. You don't have to worry about, whether or not you can do this encounter. Just learn the mechanics, pay attention to the dance of what you're doing, stay focused for the encounter, and basically it's a boss fight. So I feel like it wasn't like the Mage Tower was much more learning multiple encounters like a small dungeon, as opposed to the actual Zekvir stuff, which was like, here's a boss with 2 phases, learn the mechanics, execute it by yourself. And I think that's just a very different feel overall.
I think also to a larger degree, Mage Tower was more like demonstrate mastery of your spec, like use all the tools that your spec has available. Like they didn't nail that for every single spec, but that's kind of what they were going for.
Yeah, this
is more like, okay, can you move out of a circle? Can you dodge a frontal? Can you dodge a cone? Do you have a way to break a snare? Can you kill an ad? Can you kick a spell cast? And like pretty much every class can kind of do that. So that was fine. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was the mistake that I was making that cost me about maybe 15, 20 attempts that I could have done it faster was I was trying to go too fast. I was just playing too fast. I was in the fight, like you kind of alluded to. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon if it has to be, and that's fine because nothing else is going to happen.
Yeah.
So what he does a lot of times is like he'll put the egg somewhere in the room, and then the next thing will be some kind of directional attack, like the big cone or the frontal or something else. And what I kept doing was, I would like jump right on the egg, which would then move him over to the side, and then he would put the frontal somewhere that I couldn't get out of it.
Yeah.
So I just had to back it down a little bit. Like, okay, I'm gonna just consistently reposition him towards the middle of the room.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait for the egg to go out. After the egg goes out, I'm gonna wait another beat. I'm going to wait for the next cast of a thing. I'm going to avoid that and then burst the egg down and then walk the boss back to the middle of the room. And once I kind of got that rhythm down, it really didn't feel bad to do at all. So that was cool. There's some nice rewards for doing that. The transformation for the dirigible mount, and it was worth doing. I'm glad I did it, and it felt nice to get it done in like kind of one sitting. The only thing that was a little annoying was I don't think I had it unlocked. Like I also had to do a tier 11 delve because I hadn't done that.
Yep.
Like there's an achievement tied to that and whatever. So I'm like, okay, and that's just sloggy. I'm hoping that the higher end delves feel better in season 2, because in season 1 it's like it's here, you can do it. There's like an achievement tied to it. Everything has way too much health for no reason.
Yeah.
Have fun, I guess. Like it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel rewarding in that way, I guess, because it's just stuff with a pile of health, So hopefully season 2, I know they want to make that top end more rewarding, so that's a thing that I'm looking for. I want to see that.
Yeah.
With the new delves.
I would want delves to sort of have a health cap that landed at 8 or 9s that didn't increase, but then the difficulty of going above that either should cut in as an affix that affects delves, in my opinion, or should have more of the elites spawn throughout the dungeon. So you have more of those like rare, difficult mobs to deal with that you cannot necessarily bypass throughout the dungeon, that makes it a higher tier in that sense. So that would be more interesting to me, because I'm with you that like doing an 11 and basically being like, oh, well, this mob, like the trash mobs that I normally have like 4 million health or whatever it is and I can deal with, now just have 28 million health. And you're like, okay, like, so I just have to pull really slowly.
Yep.
And I'll eventually make my way through it. Like,
I'm just like standing here fighting one mob for 4 minutes.
Exactly. Like I'll just wait 2 minutes before pulling a pack so I can use all of my cooldowns on that pack, and then wait another 2 minutes before pulling a pack. Like, this isn't engaging gameplay to me. So I would much rather they go, okay, here's affixes that we're adding to delves, and more affixes come online basically as you turn up the difficulty, or hey, we're gonna add in additional mobs that are challenging mobs that aren't like,
right, and maybe those like
aren't
those
like scaled out
packs.
of control, right? But
yeah, they just do dangerous stuff. Right?
Exactly.
I think, we do have those. I forget what they're calling them for. We've had like the Zekvir empowered packs in this season, and they're kind of expanding on that concept in season 2. So maybe that's the way you introduce that. Because I think like the big thing that we're talking about here is interactivity, right? Like Zekvir question mark feels super interactive. There's all kinds of stuff to process while you're doing that fight.
Yeah.
There's moments where you can express your skill and feel like I'm really doing this well, and that's awesome. Doing a tier 11 delve is like difficult by tuning standards, but there's very little interactivity. You're fighting a thing that's meleeing you, or you're fighting a thing that's chain casting at you, and you have to interrupt the volley or the fear or whatever every 20 seconds. It's like, I think adding what we want in combat is like that texture and that interactivity, not just a giant pile of health. So that's what I want to see.
Yeah. All right, let's hop into talking about what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the World Quest bonus event, meaning the sign of the emissary buff is up, increasing reputation gains from World Quest by 50%, and there's a quest to complete 10 World Quests to get yourself 2,500 rep to the major faction of your choice. I do not know if the new faction is going to be available as a choice inside the situation.
I'm going to take a wild stab and say it is not going to be.
I'm putting it out there that it's worth looking at. If you're someone who doesn't normally do the weekly quests, if that's not really your thing, especially a World Quest bonus event kind of thing where you're like, the World Quest rewards aren't really for me or whatever it was, like, it's worth picking this up just to look at what faction reputations are available, because there might be the goblin faction of your choice might be an actual thing that you can choose here. So I'm just pointing that out as something you can do. I
sincerely hope so.
I will also say probably something I will do, because I have no idea if there's a mechanical aspect to it. I will probably do the quest chain inside the area to unlock those ones first, and then go and look at this quest. Because if you pick it up right away, I don't know if it just doesn't count them because they're not unlocked yet. I don't know. That's probably something else that I'm going to try and do. So
yeah, who knows? It's always weird when we have these early on, and this lines up with a new faction coming out.
Yep.
Now, like in Dragonflight, okay, when 10.2 came out with the Emerald Dream faction, that immediately got added into the pool. But 10.1, the Loam Niffin faction, that didn't get added until after 10.2, I think. So I don't know if it was like if that was a kind of shift in the way that they're doing this, and then the new factions just getting added, or if it was like a middle patch thing and like the middle patch faction doesn't get added because it's going to be there for so long and then you'll catch up on it later. I don't know. But
I don't know.
Even if you're not really like a world quester, you will probably be doing 10 world quests this week with the new patch and everything. Yep. So just don't forget to pick it up, get it on your radar. You're going to want the new faction rep, even if outdoor content is not really your jam. Like there's no reason not to do it. And there will be a fair bit of bang for your buck this week. Also, jumping ahead a tiny bit, we do have Darkmoon Fair coming in this upcoming reset. So Sunday, Monday will also be a chance for some increased rep. So keep that in mind. We get that Friday World Quest rollover. If that happens in Undermine, then you might be able to stack up some rep gains and bang out those quests before reset. Just some things to think about, because I know some people just want to zoom through the renown rep and just get it over with. It's like, I'll do exactly this much outdoor content to get the rep track done, and then I'm not doing it anymore. So if you're in that category, this is the week to get started. It should be a great week to get started on that, actually.
Yeah. And Jason, maybe you can answer this one for me. I'm not sure because I don't remember off the top of my head. Do you think the Delves weekly, which is what we're coming into for the weekly for Bran, you got to pick up Delves. It's not the choose one week. It's not the Titan fragments. Do you think are there going to be new sparks for season 2, or is it going to be the same sparks but a new token that you apply to the sparks to increase item level?
It should be new sparks if we go with the Dragonflight model, because otherwise people would just have too many sparks banked up.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so it should be new sparks. Now it is Delve week in the rotation, but we are kind of going out on a limb here. We don't know for sure what the new outdoor weekly is going to be in terms of the rotation. Yeah. Because there could be one tied to Undermined. There might be one in Undermined that also could, fit in the rotation. All this stuff could go away in favor of only whatever's available in Undermined. And it's going to take us probably a couple weeks to see what the pattern is here, but if we're in a similar pattern that we started from, then it should be Delves weekly. So check in with Bran. The quest will probably to do between 2 and 3 delves with some different category. Yep. So I don't know. I guess we'll see what the spark. We probably don't start getting sparks until the first week of the season.
I don't know. So I just want to be sure that people know and are aware that if they've been putting off doing these quests, it's probably worth just knocking one out until we know for sure what's happening with the sparks, so that you can see whether or not you're going to get, your spark fragment from just doing this week, so that next week when the next roll comes around, you can then craft something that week. Like, I don't know which one they're doing, but if we're still getting half a spark a week, if this half a sparks start like this week, then you're crafting your first item next week, which is a big deal item level wise for a lot of your gearing. So just keep that in mind. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get some blue text on it, because the other side of that coin might be, well, sparks start the first week of the season, which means don't turn in your Delves weekly this week, right? Like,
well, you can only get one spark fragment
we're not gonna distribute it to you, but like they might do it anyway, right? Like you might be able to just like log in and then just grab your fragment. I don't. It's always weird at the initial rollout of the season. One thing I do want to mention while we're on this topic of Delves, because we talked about this on the show, we didn't have full clarity on it. Your undercoins are going to reset, right? So I know this is like super last minute. And I got to remember, I got to get in there and spend some undercoins, because we just figured, they'll carry over. They're just mostly for cosmetics anyway. No, they're resetting undercoins. Spend them before reset in your region this week.
All right.
It's a little obnoxious, because you're going to be spending them maybe just to spend them, and then you're going to want a whole bunch more when the season rolls over. This is the World of Warcraft seasonal treadmill, so we just gotta be aware.
Yeah. That is a massively impactful one. I was really hoping undercoin wouldn't. But yeah, I mean, I guess at this point it's like, grab whatever cosmetics you can, spend out what you have. There's no point in saving it. I hope you weren't at like 9,200 of 10,000 when you're trying to buy the pet or something, because that now puts a huge time crunch on you if that's the case. But yeah, if you can spend it, I would obviously recommend spending to buy cosmetics now, as opposed to getting some sort of weird gold conversion, which I'm assuming they'll do. And not then, essentially having to earn the undercoin again to get the same cosmetics that you wanted to get. That part is not fun when they do that. So just be aware of that. Okay. PvP Brawl this week is Warsong Scramble. This is Warsong Gulch with modified rules. This is essentially the first team to capture 10 flags wins, and you can capture flags even when your flag isn't at your base. So you can essentially just sprint back and forth trying to cap as many flags as possible. Get yourself some marks of honor, conquest, and honor. Hopefully folks are enjoying the brawls that are out there. I think we need a new brawl soon, hopefully at some point. The world boss for the week is the Aggregation of Horrors. It's the Scarred and Abomination and Ringing Deeps. We don't know yet whether or not item levels are being adjusted for world bosses. That could be something that's worth checking out as well. You might see, like, I don't know, 620 eye level loot coming off of world bosses suddenly, which would be much more interesting, or 630 something loot might be a possibility. Maybe. Yeah.
My assumption is that the Kazalgar world bosses are just going to become pointless for a while. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We don't know right now, and we didn't get full patch notes prior to recording today. They're late, I guess. They're usually out by Thursday or Friday before a patch, but we don't have them. Just going by, I would say since like Shadowlands, the behavior that we've seen is new patch comes out, we get a new world boss at season roll. So I wouldn't expect the new world boss in Undermine to be available this week. It should be season 2, week 1.
Probably.
And they'll continue with this the zone world boss rotation, but it'll just be the season 1 loot until maybe they do some end of expansion thing. So, if you have like a brand new tune, then the world bosses might at least get you something. If you get a drop, then it's something you can at least wear that's actual max level gear. But my expectation is these are going to become irrelevant very soon, like as of this week or certainly next week.
Might end up just highlighting the new world boss when it comes up and around. We'll see what we end up doing. All right, Mythic Plus affixes for the week are Voidbound, which means any mob that gets buffed. That's right. Void emissary spawn throughout the dungeon and when you're in combat, and buff enemies. Any mob that gets buffed takes reduced damage. Killing the Void emissary gives players that buff, giving them 20% versatility and 30% cooldown reduction for 30 seconds. This is my favorite affix that we end up running into. It is super easy to knock out this ad, especially at this point of the season when we're this geared, and you essentially get this really nice massive versatility buff and cooldown reduction, which means all your dispels are easier. If you are someone who plays an evoker and can run the talent that lets you do additional damage to shielded targets, you clearly want to be running that attack this week, so you can just throw that on the Voidbound whenever it spawns. If you are a monk of any type, Touch of Death is your friend. It's on a 1-minute cooldown. These things spawn every minute. You literally just throw Touch of Death on it every time it spawns. It's really nice, and you can essentially make your whole group very happy by doing that. But the moment you kill this thing off, you get a really nice buff, which means that pretty much for 50% or maybe 45% of the dungeon, you will have 20% more versatility and 30% cooldown reduction, which you just feel so much better running these keys. So this is a great week to essentially be, I guess, signing off of season 1, because this is the limbo week. So be sure you're enjoying your keys this week.
Yeah, it's a really good combo to finish up the season with. Like if you need any last minute, achievements or teleports or whatever, man, you couldn't ask for a better combo, I think, than Voidbound and Low Fort. So take advantage of that if you need to. And also, like, we are seeing a change to Voidbound next time. This is the last time we're seeing it like this, where in season 2, I think it should be even easier to deal with in season 2, because it's going to have a 15-second cast instead of like it's immediately channeling on stuff and it's buffing it. It'll be, you have 15 seconds to kill it, and if you kill it, then nothing happens to the enemies at all. And if you don't kill it, then they get a portion of shielding based on whatever its health was. This was actually pretty punishing the first couple rotations, because stuff would immediately start getting shielded up, and you're trying to AoE stuff down or whatever. It spawns at a bad time with boss overlaps, and that was a little rough. I feel like this should get even easier to deal with at the outset of season 2, but I guess we'll see where the tuning lands. But yeah, really good way to wrap up season 1 if you have unfinished business in the Keystone system.
Yep. Kalimdor Cup is back. That's right. It's going to run from February 25th until March 10th. You will have riders of Azeroth, hopping on their dragons and riding around in Winterspring, Mount Hyjal, Fellwood, Ashenvale, Ashara, Duratar, Southern Barrens, Thousand Needles, Desolus, Feralis, Ungoro, Silithus, and Uldum to get yourself the badges that you need to get to be able to buy all the Drake Watcher manuscripts, as well as a bunch of transmog, and of course get those achievements for the Kalimdor Racing Completionist going on. So if you are someone who has been doing a lot of dragon riding or who missed out on this back in Dragonflight, it is returning. You can start picking stuff up again, so definitely take advantage. Get yourself your teal scales for your Velocidrake or your curved nose horn for your Slitherdrake and some blonde hair. Yeah, whatever it is you're looking to do. They have those available and those badges to earn, so be sure you are taking advantage of the race when it's around.
Yeah, I'm glad this is coming back. We talked about it when they were rolling these out last year. Like, man, I hope these come back on a regular basis because it's a cool event. And the timing is a little weird with a new patch and new season. It's maybe not ideal, but without the season roll, you might end up going through all the new stuff in Undermine outdoors and going, well, I want to play WoW, but I don't have any new patch stuff to do. If you missed out on Kalimdor Cup stuff and there is no new stuff, then yeah, it's a perfect time to take advantage of it. I think it usually, you can usually do these cups in maybe a couple hours, unless you're like a total dragon riding pro, and then you can just blast them all out. But we'll see if anything new. I haven't seen like any official announcement or anything about this coming back. It's just in the in-game calendar, so I don't know what to expect in terms of new rewards or anything. I'm kind of selfishly hoping there aren't any new rewards and I can just not do this because I kind of maxed out all the old world cups, last year. So I guess, we'll see. And if there's any updates, then we'll get into it more next show. And then you'll still have like a week to go through it. So, but yeah, I thought they did a great job with these events. They were fun to do. And I'm not like a big time a racing enthusiast, it's like a thing to do and it's cool. I like it and all, but when the limited time cups came through, I was like, I got to do all these because I don't know if they're ever coming back. I don't, I just want to make sure I want to check them all out and see what all the courses are like. And I want to get the rewards. So
yeah,
I did them all first time around.
I did not. I missed out on some of them. So I'm thrilled that these are coming back because then I can hop in and get my race on, hopefully. Now, this window of time is a very bizarre window of time for me to actually be able to play the game at all. But however, races don't take very long. So who knows? Maybe there'll be like little downtime breaks where I'm just like knocking a race out inside a 5-minute window that I have or something. I don't know. We'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. But I want to be sure people knew that they're coming back Tuesday and they're running for 2 weeks. So be sure you're taking advantage while you can in that window of time. Next up, Mythic Plus Tempered Hero title. This is updated as of February 21st. Basically, they are stating that if you are someone who wants to earn the Tempered Hero title for the 0.1% Mythic Plus rating, you currently need 3444 season score. I will say that was on the 21st. As of today, it is 3450 is where it actually is, and there are 1,279 people who currently are qualified for that, and that's all factions. That's spread out across everything. 607 of those characters are Alliance, in case you're curious, as far as how the numbers are splitting up. So it's almost 50%. So
wow,
yeah, it's a pretty neat thing to sort of look at and see. And I'm excited that there were, basically seeing like almost 1,200 people, almost 1,300 people getting this title right now is who's in the running. That's a crazy high score. 3,000 wasn't that bad to get to. 3,000 was like very doable. 3,400 is like you're doing 16s and 17s kind of thing. So
getting above 3K in the current rating system is always it's definitely not for the meek when it comes to keystoning.
Yeah,
I apparently am going to miss the cutoff by about 700-800 rating. So I don't think I can squeeze that out by Monday night. But yeah, I pushed 3K once and I didn't hate it, but I don't know that I really care to do it again. But now we, season 2, we got it. There's a reward. There's a feat of strength, an amount for 3K.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I might not be as content to just do whatever the baseline keys we end up at are for the whole season. But I would never push a hero title. I just don't have that kind of time.
No, yeah.
And I don't have the desire to play around the kind of meta that you need to. It's awesome for the people that do it, or especially can do it without like really playing the meta or like pugging it. I mean, I see people like pugging their way up to 3,400 plus, and it's like that is not the world that I live in, but congratulations to everybody that's up there doing that, and I'll be down in my 2700 range.
Yeah. We got a post here from Linksy about Undermine profession changes that states the following profession changes will be available next week, as in this coming Tuesday. It says specialist resets. So those are kicking in. Basically, Darla Fluxy inside of Dornogal, as well as Cyben inside of Valdraken's Artisans Market, can now help you with resetting and unlearning all of your points that you have going on. Doing so I'm going to read the exact text so everyone's really clear. With 11.0.1, we are offering an opportunity to reset your specializations, which can be utilized once per Dragon Isles profession and once per Khazalgar profession. Doing so will unlearn all recipes and benefits granted by your specialization. So if you actually were like, I was spec'd into axes on my blacksmith, and now I've reset all my points, and I want to make an axe, but I spent all my points into shields. Well, you can't make an axe anymore because you spent all your points into shields. Just be aware. So you will lose that, and it will refund your spent knowledge points. So that's basically, if you've spent points, they should all be refunded, every single point that you spent, and you'll have to respend them again to be able to max that out. Along with that, enchanted crests. To help simplify some of the crafting process, enchanted crests are no longer made by enchanters and are instead purchasable from the enchanting supplies vendor or Seunite outside of the Crafter's Enclave in Dornogal. So, yeah, you no longer have to buy an item and then put that item up or find an enchanting friend, or put that item up for a crafting order so that an enchanter can just enchant that item and then take that item and put it into a crafting order for the actual thing you want to craft, or just craft the thing you want to craft. So that is simpler, I will say. That does simplify the process. It does remove something for enchanters. This was a really great thing when you caught them, because if you had invested a lot into, resourcefulness and other stuff that you could invest into, you could get a fair refund on some of the materials that you use to craft this. And you could gain some materials that way. So that is a downside. And it was nice to have the extra crafting orders, but I agree that it was a very weird, obscure process to like buy an item and then have an enchanter enchant it and then use that item. It's a tweak that they did there. All right, tuning. Multiple weapon enchants, embellishments, and consumables are underperforming and have received tuning changes. I know that this includes a lot of stuff. They list off the siphoning stiletto damage effect increased for blacksmiths by 7%. The enchant weapon authority of fiery resolve, the healing has been increased by 42% at quality 1. The healing by 23% at 2 and 3. So authority of fiery resolve becoming a much more powerful enchant in general, but also folks who aren't wanting to spend on the big spend for enchants, 1 will now be much more effective than it previously was. The enchant weapon authority of air, damage absorption, has been increased by 148% at quality 1, 110% at quality 2, and 100% at quality 3. So again, this is one that barely anyone was using. I wasn't seeing anyone really calling for the authority of air of air. This damage absorption one. This might actually put this back on the table. We'll have to see what folks start running based off the sims that happened with it. The authority of radiant power. The damage dealt has been increased by 23% because everyone was using Authority of the Depths. So now that is a possible contender again. We'll have to look at what the sims say for that. The enchant weapon Authority of Storms. The damage dealt increased by 45% at quality 1, 23% at quality 2, and 3. So again, trying to get another damage enchant potentially in there. And then finally, of course, the enchant weapon Authority of the Depths. The damage dealt per stack increased by 74% at quality 1. Damage dealt per stack at 48% for quality 2 and 3 increased. These are increases. So if you liked Authority Depths before, you're going to like it even more in Season 2. So we'll have to see how that pans out for folks. They're also buffing the Oil of the Deep Toxins and the Oil of Beladar's Grace. The Deep Toxins won by 48%. The healing buff for Oil of Beladar's Grace is being increased by 235%. That is the increase happening to Oil Beladar's Grace. Do not sleep on this. This will be something that we see people start to test and see if this is going to work for them for what they're choosing to do. So that may be a massive contender for people using that with that kind of a buff happening to it. In engineering, the pouch of pocket grenades damage was increased by 30%, and the concealed chaos module damage was increased by 25%. For jewel crafting, the captured starlight damage absorb has been increased by 327%. So yeah, keep that in mind as well as another one they buffed. And then last but not least, in leatherworking, sanctified torchbearer's grips damage increased by 48%. So this is a weird one. So like a lot of the crafting professions like leatherworking, tailoring, and blacksmithing have armor that they can make that has essentially an embellishment already on the armor. You don't add an embellishment, it comes with an embellishment. And some of those embellishments are pretty weak. The big problem is you can't take those and turn them into a tier piece because you can't. It's a crafted piece and whatnot. So it's tricky that they put in some of these really cool items that you'd love to use. I know the tailoring one has a set that like massively increases your haste, which is kind of cool. But you would never wear it because you have to give up your tier set to wear it. So like it's a strange situation to do that. So it's interesting to see them buffing one of those unique things. I guess it'd be first people who are in outdoor world or delving or something. Maybe if they aren't making their tier set as often, who knows? That's something that got buffed as well. But yeah, lots of changes to professions. Glad to see this, but no mention of adding new things at all. Just tuning current things.
Well, yeah, there's not a lot of like new recipes and stuff coming in, I don't think, like in this upcoming patch, but I kind of like that, especially because professions are so much broader than they used to be. And I think, before it used to be like, okay, I'm going to spend 3 hours today. I'm going to max out my profession for the expansion, right? And you just like go buy the stuff you needed or go collect it or whatever. And you go follow the guide and you just skill all the way up and then you were done. And if somebody needed something, you'd make it or whatever. Obviously now it's a much different world. And so I think like a way that they used to deal with that was, okay, well, new patch comes in. Well, there's like essentially a new tier of the profession that's been added. So
yeah.
Yes, you have the same skill, but here's all these new recipes you need to go learn, and then you need to get new materials in order to make them and whatever.
Yeah.
I think they're moving away from that a bit more, especially at least with the middle patch. So I like it. I mean, some of these are really aggressive, like eye-popping numbers changes, so that might kind of mix up how people are approaching setting up their characters. I do love the change to Enchanted Crest because it was just very strange. And
it was clunky.
Enchanters,
it was.
Yeah. Enchanters still have plenty of stuff to do that people are going to want them to do for them, especially as everybody's getting entirely new sets of gear.
Yeah.
And yeah, like every time somebody would need a crafted piece with an Enchanted Crest, it would be that conversation in guild chat of like, so wait, what do I do? I need what? Where do I get that from? And then what do I do with it? It's like, it was just very strange. And, I think we can. I'm sorry, enchanters, but I think you'll be okay without being able to make those. The spec resets thing, like it's great that it's coming in, but geez, like one time ever per profession per expansion.
Yeah, I know.
Like, why is it just
pressure,
a more...
right? Talk about pressure. Ooh.
Yeah, like I don't. It's good. Like it's better than not having it at all. But basically, all this does is lets you course correct some really bad mistake. And then go read the guide or whatever.
Yeah, but I would have accepted once a month is what I think I would have leaned towards. I think at that point you're making a decision that is impactful over the next 4 resets, and you'll have fewer people being like, okay, this month I'm going to craft my helm, so I better dump all my points in a helm. Okay, next month I'm going to craft my gloves, so I'm going to reset everything and craft my... Like I don't foresee that. And if you're doing it from a roleplay perspective, your character's essentially then spending a month researching how to make something new and losing all of their notes about the old stuff that they've done, right? I do feel like something like that might work better. Once an expansion, yeah, you're right, is like a oops, I need to course correct. I've made that one course correction. I guess I'm done now. That's it, kind of thing, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think so.
It can't be you can't just do it freely. Because otherwise people will just bounce around crafting whatever the heck they want with like 40 points, which doesn't make sense.
It would lead to all kinds of bad behavior.
Way bad behavior.
You essentially would not have a spec because you'd be able to just like, I'm going to put all my points in manufacturing my mats.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to respec, and now that I've made all my mats and I got all the benefit from that, now I'm going to put it all in making the finished item that I want, and now I'm going to repeat the process.
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
You could have like a gold sync level cost on it that then graduates, and that would really deter people from doing stuff. Like you go broke. But yeah, maybe having some kind of timer on this or something would be better. Like it's better to have one reset than zero, but one reset doesn't really it doesn't solve the problem of like you were kind of just giving the example of I've spec'd into axes, but now I want to be able to make shields. It's like if your role in your team changes or something, then your profession may need to change accordingly. And I don't know that this allows you that kind of flexibility. The other thing I would say about this, though, I guess the part that sort of mitigates that, at least at this point in the War Within, is that if you've been doing a profession since launch, you should be almost done with points. Like you are in the home stretch of points. So that sort of de-incentivizes the need to respec it because we're almost done, and then you'll just be done for the entire rest of the expansion.
Yeah.
But but going in, if they keep it like this, if they added reset NPC into midnight from week 1, then it's like, oh, I was just clicking stuff because it looked cool, and actually it turns out that this thing stinks, and I should have been taking the other thing. Then okay, you get that early reset, you get on the right track earlier in the expansion, like that's better. I think a lot of people are going to look at this and go, it's cool, it's in there, but I'm not actually respecing this round. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, this is the additional class updates for Undermine.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
No.
Basically, they're like, here's our release candidate. We're good to go. And then they went, actually, based off of some gameplay data and player feedback, the following changes are going to arrive alongside this patch. So I'm not going to read off all the classes, but I'll highlight the Feral Druid ones because you mentioned the top of the show. Melee auto attack damage, 25% increase. Adaptive swarm damage, 25% increase. The Liberation of Undermine 2-set bonus damage increased by 40%, and Wildstalker, the bursting growth damage increased by 20%. As well as we see Guardian Druids getting another damage increase, the 5% increased damage across the board, as well as 20% to Moonfire damage, and 80% increased damage to Fury of Elune for Guardian Druids. Evokers, Devastation Evoker, all spell damage increased by 6%, and the 2-set bonus no longer grants Essence Burst from the Shattering Star procs. So one of those like, hey, we're giving you an overall damage buff, but your 2-set bonus is getting a nerf. So that's an interesting one for Devastation. Augmentation. Shifting Sands versatility effectiveness reduced by 20%. The Breath of Eons now accumulates 8% of total damage taken as opposed to 10%. And the Close Clutch Mates increases the effectiveness of Ebonmite and Breath of Eons by 10%. Outside of Raid was 25%. So outdoor world change on that one, not a huge one on the last part. But 2% less damage is a massive amount on Breath of Eons. It's accumulating 2% less of the damage the target takes while it's affected by this. That's a really big deal. Basically, think about like replicating all the damage on a target, and now it's just replicating 2% less than it previously did, which is substantial. As well as the Shifting Sands versatility effectiveness reduced by 20% is a very large reduction. So like this is more nerfs to AUG. I don't think AUG is dead. I think people who are calling that as like are it is no longer the top DPS in my opinion. I think there will certainly be some things that change. I don't think it should have been the top DPS. One of the reasons why I was switching is because they've done so little to nerf top DPS specs, as Enhancement Shaman will prove, that just sits as king of Season 1 and never received enough changes to ever not be king of Season 1 and have anyone else take the throne. So that is something where I was like, hey, maybe AUG will end up being that, and that'll be a good thing to switch to. But like I said, I'll see how things play out and whether or not it makes sense for me to continue to do the swap over to AUG. With the changes that they're doing, it's certainly discouraging to see those sorts of things happening before the patch has even gone live. So we'll have to see what next week feels like, and then obviously where things are sitting at stat wise once the raid content starts going. Okay, Holy Paladins, 4% increased healing. So Holy Paladins getting themselves a nice little buff there. And we saw our Shadow Priests get an overall buff in damage by another 13%, which is why I said our Augmentation Evoker is looking at switching to Shadow Priest, because they're clearly letting Shadow Priest shine in this next patch. We did see a reduction in the tier set bonuses. So basically they made the tier set bonuses all either do less damage or trigger less often for the Liberation of Undermine stuff for Shadow Priest. But think about it this way, without your tier set bonus, you're doing substantially more damage than you were before, as well as your Void Reaver now has 25% increased damage off Void Blast, as well as your Collapsing Void now deals 15% increased damage, and Inner Quietus increases the damage of Shadow Word Pain and Vampiric Touch by 35% as opposed to 25%. So they're making your damage less rely on your tier set bonus, which I think overall is better for the class. So I think Shadow Priests are going to be in a good spot as we go into this next patch. Resto Shamans also receiving a 4% increased healing buff. And our warriors out there, Fury and Arms, are getting all ability damage reduced by 5% for both Fury and Arms warriors. Sorry guys, I know you've kind of also sat towards the bottom of the damage charts throughout season 1, and the only times you really flew above that is when there was a lot of targets for you to hit all at the same time. But apparently they're not done nerfing you. So yeah, if you were playing a warrior as a DPS spec and you've been considering switching, it seems like the trend is continuing for you. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, these are all changes that came out since the final build of PTR. So yeah, lots here to absorb for folks that are out there for sure.
Yeah, I think some of these are a little too sweeping to put in, like when did this come out? Thursday or Friday night? Yeah. Before the patch, without the community being able to extensively test it, and for theory crafters to be able to actually communicate what these changes mean to their respective communities. I feel like this is too much. It's one thing if it was like, well, this is up 5%, this is down 5%. That doesn't really fundamentally change anything about the way a spec plays or anything like that. Some of these things are much bigger than a simple numbers tweak like that. And I don't see the logic of like you run PTR since December, right? It's been running for 2 months.
Yeah.
You've been doing class changes, tuning changes, whatever, reworks, all that stuff. And then you let it settle down. The stuff starts to quiet down. We see fewer changes. We see less communication about, PTR builds, whatever. We get a release candidate. We're in the release window. And then, especially like Evoker players are suddenly, it's like a rug pull situation. I've talked to some people that I play with, and like Rogue's getting numbers buffs, but they're not dealing with, the fundamental underlying clunkiness issues that people playing the class are unhappy with.
You're just energy starved. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the priest reworks with Mindbender, Void Wraith are things that people are maybe a little bit taken aback by this late in the process. And then you kind of alluded to it as well, like Shaman just kind of goes untouched, right?
Yep.
Like I feel like Shaman has really just dominated all of season 1. Really, I mean, early on in season 1 Mythic Plus, it was just kind of like incorrect not to bring a Resto Shaman to your group.
Yep.
They just keep going in one direction, and they're not getting touched up to bring them in line with the other classes, really. I mean, really across their specs. That seems strange. So I don't see the wisdom in pushing changes like this before the patch goes live. You have a whole week of no raids or whatever where you can actually see what people are going to do with this stuff and then dial stuff in leading into raid. Obviously, we'll see extensive retuning as the raid matures. But you kind of had this stuff in the players' minds. This stuff was locked in a couple weeks ago. And I know just from following this game and its production cycle for so many years, like I knew that there would be a blog like this at the end of this past week, right? Like they always do this. But I feel like this is a bit of an overreach. I feel like this is just too much in this window. Like I don't understand why these changes needed to happen before the patch goes live. Right. Before people are playing what you already landed on and what people had already theory crafted around and were already prepared to be playing. Why not give that like a week to bake, at least, even if not as many people are playing and it's not the current content, like at least let people play with it for a week. I don't know. I think all it does is upsets people. I don't know how much of a real benefit there is to the overall gameplay. And spec representation and stuff like that. Again, like you're not hitting the higher performing specs. You're not knocking them down. So
yeah,
like how much can you knock down other interesting and powerful specs until everybody just goes, well, I'm just going to play Shaman then.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I feel like that's what I've seen that happen with some people that
It's
I play
happened twice.
with, where it's like
in season 1 for us, it happened with 2 different people on our team who literally were like, if they're just leaving this alone, I guess I'll switch to that, because that's like, we just need one. Like literally it was like, okay, we are looking at this even happened in the race where they're like, I guess we're bringing in enhancement shamans because they just do too much damage. It wasn't about raid utility. It wasn't about what we needed in our raid team. It was literally about this class just does so much damage. How could you not bring it? Like, it was just like, I guess we'll just main swap. And it's sad to see that that's the situation, right? Like,
I mean, I think so. That's my personal opinion on it, is that, you for some reason you've been really hands off with reining in the power level of Shaman, and also the goal has not been to push other specs up to that level. It's not like Shaman is setting some kind of a baseline. It's like people switch to Shaman, and if they can reasonably pick up one of the builds or playstyles, they're doing an extra 20% damage in worse gear than whatever they were maining before then. That's what I've seen a couple times this patch with some people I play with. And I don't know. I think that honestly, I think stuff like this is just kind of bad for player trust. This is too close to patch launch to shake up this much. That's just my opinion on it, and I'm not even really affected by this, right? Like my spec isn't even on this list. Nothing is getting touched up for what I play at all, really. I mean, Guardian Druid a little bit, but I dabble at best, and it's getting some nice damage buffs. But I think they should just avoid doing stuff like this. Lock in, let players play with the classes as you intend to ship them for at least a couple weeks on PTR. Leave it alone until the patch ships and let people play with it. And if you need to change stuff in the week before raid, if you see any red flags in the live data, then absolutely change it. Do what you think is best for the game. But I feel like this is super disruptive to players who, like, the people that disrupts the most, right, are the most serious players who are doing raid prep, doing dungeon prep. They're ready to get into season 2 endgame. They're building comps. They're figuring out what their builds are going to be and who they're going to be playing with and what they're going to be building and all that stuff. And those are the people that it affects the most. If you're an outdoor player, Delves player, whatever, like this stuff is going to impact you, but not to the level that happens when you're trying to plug into a group of other players and everybody's trying to be synergistic, trying to bring something that's going to benefit the group, something that's going to be powerful. You change the calculus and all that stuff at the drop of a hat, and people don't have time to react to it. There's no time now to switch mains, right? And like level up, gear up. We had months to do that. And people kind of were going in a direction that now there's kind of this hard left turn. I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating a bit, and it's anecdotal too, because like I play with people who play Evoker and play AUG, or we're looking at maybe switching to main AUG. I play with rogues who've just been unsatisfied with the class design for years at this point. So I think some of these things hit home a little bit more for me than for the average player maybe, but that's where I'm at with these changes.
Yeah, so in Warcraft logs, right, if you look at the 95th percentile of people performing inside mythic keys, so that upper area of keys, not 99th but 95th, so not your outliers, you have shamans, both elemental and enhanced, doing 10% more damage than the next class at the top of the charts. They do 20% more damage than 9 of the other specs. And of those other specs, it's both Druid DPS specs, both Death Knight DPS specs, 2 of the Warlock specs that are out there. You have Windwalker Monks, Beast Mastery Hunters, Shadow Priests, obviously AUG Evokers, all in that bottom, doing 20% less damage than an Elemental or an Enhancement Shaman. Like, I don't understand how you can have one class's 2 DPS specs live at least 10% damage above the next, and 20% damage above, a lot of these other classes that have similarly 2 DPS specs. So it's pretty shocking. And that's through it used to be worse. This has gotten better since earlier on, but we're still 20% apart is shocking to me in a balanced perspective. Like, it's just, okay, guys, like,
I think so.
You need work. You need to do work here, and you need to address this, and it needed to be like way early on. And so to do changes like what you're talking about for this patch into PTR and not address shamans, you're like, what you're doing isn't a 20% increase to some of these other classes. So how are we supposed to expect
right
that we're not going to see essentially again elemental and enhancement shamans just living towards the top of the meters all of the time in these situations? So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. But it's certainly a strange thing to look at when we see these changes coming in last minute with no testing attached to them. And essentially this next week will be our guinea pig week to see if this was adjusted enough and what changes we're going to get. Because I expect another one of these tuning passes at the end of this reset that we're coming up on. So yeah,
absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll see big class tuning changes every week for the next, I don't know, month and a half. You know, that's unless they dial it in faster. But yeah, it's just getting hard to see like what the plan is in terms of the overall balance, and it's harder to justify playing stuff that isn't shaman. And it's one thing when you see like, for some reason, like sites like Wowhead still do like, oh, WoW Classic DPS rankings for Molten Core, or like whatever raid is out in, like the anniversary realms. Yeah. It's like, you're not going to believe this, but warriors are on top, right? It's like, that's different because like you can't change that version of the game, but like, we are in a version of the game that you can change. And when it's just shaman, then I think that creates a problem with player motivation and with player choice. So I mean, my thing is not like nerf shaman into the ground. Make all the other classes also appealing to play through their raw throughput and stuff like that. I think people play shaman, don't even really like it, but it's just quote unquote correct. Yeah. So that stinks. I mean, there's going to be differences. You're not going to have full parity, but boost some other specs up then, make people feel rewarded for making a choice that makes them feel good to play. To me, like the warlock situation is a good example where it's like there's at least one warlock spec that is a good DPS spec. The other two might be in the bottom, 5, 6 or 7 specs to play for DPS, but at least there's one. Whereas you look at like Death Knights and you look at you look at balanced druids and feral druids and you look at some of these specs and you're like, there just literally isn't a good DPS spec for you to play inside of a raid environment that's going to compete with the majority of the other DPS inside of that raid. And I think that's just really unfortunate to see that there's only very specific situational times where you might have a chance to shine, and often it requires, like, this was great. Ovanax was a great example this past week. When we went in to kill Ovanax this past week, we just didn't have a DPS warrior. And because we didn't have a DPS warrior, I was in there in a boomkin, and suddenly I'm doing like 4.2 million damage because there's all these ads that are living long enough for me to actually do damage to them with Starfall. And you're like, okay, like I actually felt good about meter stuff inside of a fight for once in that situation. But as soon as you drop a couple DPS warriors into that group, those things die so fast, you have zero time to do anything with it, and they just soak up all that damage. And you're like, okay, well, like that's why your numbers might suck on an encounter for the majority of it, because the other specs just have a better version of the AoE or the DPS you're trying to do and soak all that up immediately, and you don't get an opportunity to perform there. And your single target, similarly with warriors, they suffer from this too. Your single target damage is just so garbage by comparison to other specs. You cannot, you're 20% behind. You'll never keep up with them. You just won't. And that's just really unfortunate. So anyways, we'll see what tuning stuff happens going forward. But let's talk a little bit about this patch that we're getting on Tuesday. So War Within Season 2 begins on March 4th. So we'll talk about that. The patch on Tuesday, obviously. So not this week. This week is what we're saying. But, we have 1 week of patch, and then we get into season. So yeah, so this week is sort of where I was going with this. This week is going to be story-based. You're going to be going into Undermine. You're going to be unlocking a lot of the factions, exploring the quests that are there, probably checking out the delves that are kicking around in there, doing that sort of content and getting used to class changes and things like that that are happening. Then we'll talk about March 4th, which is what this post is about, this blog post. In March 4th, we're going to have the new raid, Liberation of Undermine, 8 bosses. It's in the Ringing Deeps. There's going to be obviously a story mode through mythic difficulties that are there that you can explore and have fun with. You're going to have the new dungeon, Operation Floodgate, for you to hop into and check out. There's going to be a new dungeon rotation for Season 2 for all your Mythic Plus stuff. So we have Floodgate,
We got Cinderbrew Meadery, the Rookery, Dark Flame Cleft, Priory of the Sacred Flame, Motherlode from Battle for Azeroth, Mechagon from Battle for the workshop side of it from Battle for Azeroth, and Theater of Pain from Shadowlands. That is going to be the new Mythic Plus rotation, which means if you were trying to get particular crafting recipes and stuff, and you haven't been getting your folios or whatever it was from the Cinderbrew and Rookery and Dark Flame Cleft, you can now get those by simply hopping into your heroic versions of those dungeons that now exist as a difficulty for you to go into and do. So you can do all that stuff too in there. It's not just about Mythic Plus and getting the folios at the end of Mythic Plus. The feats of strength that you'll be looking for in this next season. We have the War Within Keystone Explorer, which is just completing a Mythic Plus Keystone in time. We have the War Within Keystone Conqueror, which is 1500 Mythic Plus rating, and you get the Enterprising as a title. You have War Within Keystone Master, which is the Mythic Plus rating above 2000, and you get yourself the Crimson Shredder Tank mount. You have War Within Keystone Hero, and that's 2500 rating. And then you have the War Within Keystone Legend, which is 3000 rating, and awards the Enterprising Shredder Tank. And then, of course, we have the Enterprising Hero, which is the 0.01% of, just 0.1%, not 0.01, but 0.1% of the player base will get that, and they get the Enterprising Hero title, and that is the top people with the highest ratings. You get the Enterprising Hero for that. The Keystone Hero that's out there for completing these dungeons, if you complete the following Keystone Hero achievements on a Mythic 10 or higher, you can get the Keystone Hero for each of the dungeons in the rotation. Of course, there is a new affix stuff for us to chat about. We have Xal'atath's Bargain Pulsar, which is while in combat, Xal'atath's minions summon pulsars that orbit around players and must be intercepted within the time limit. So these are, hey, here's these spinning orbs you have to run around and grab, basically is what this ends up being. And you get yourself a buff for doing that. So that's the new one that's coming in to the rotation. We will still have Xal'atath's Guile happening. We'll still have Voidbound happening for folks to get in there and check those out. We don't have anything else new that's shifting within the actual Mythic Plus system other than that new affix that's happening there. And of course, difficulty shift will happen, right? There'll be that hey, a 10 that you were doing previously will now be more difficult because it's scaled up to the new item levels. So just keep that in mind. People will be grinding their keystones back up again.
Yeah, a couple thoughts on the Mythic Plus season. Yeah, I mean, pretty standard in terms of like the overall reward structure, I think. A couple things that are like, obviously we have the 3K rating feat of strength with the mount that we talked about. The Keystone Hero thing will now previously we've seen it's part of the achievement that grants you get the cosmetic, and you also get it used to give you like a token for a set item of your choice. Those types of achievements, there's one attached to Mythic Raid as well, and for high rank PvP, those are going to reward catalyst charges this season instead of an item, which I think is cool because a lot of times I end up getting an item from that reward that I don't need anymore because I'm looking for Myth Track gear, and so being able to convert an extra piece of gear I think is going to be better for a lot of players, which is cool. Pulsar, we'll see how that turns out, but it's the replacement for Oblivion, and the orbs are going to be orbiting players instead of firing from all angles of the outside of the room. And so you'll need to move in together to soak each other's orbs, and it should be easier to deal with than Oblivion, but we'll see what it's like in practice. We're moving some stuff around. The timer affix is moving out of that 10 range. So they're shuffling stuff around a little bit. It should, the goal overall, I think, is for a smoother progression path through the Keystone ranks and for the overall process to feel more rewarding, to have like a more favorable entry point into the system, and to then be able to work your way up the system without, I guess like supplementing from too many other places. Like you should be able to play Mythic Plus if that's what you want to play, get into it, work your way up through it, and get the rewards that you want, and keep pushing new ranks. And then I think for me the most exciting change is that at 12, right, we're going to see no scaling from 11 to 12. And then we're going to see the change where if you complete all dungeons in time on 12, then your key never decays below 12. And then if you complete all keys on 13 in time, then your key never decays below 13. So I think there's definitely going to be some motivation for players like me to get higher up the ranks than maybe we have in the last couple seasons. So there's some interesting new additions overall to the system in beyond just the kind of, we're talking about seasonal rotation stuff here, which is all that's coming in alongside some changes that I think are intended to be more permanent or hopefully at least persist through a few seasons here. So I think it's looking up, man. I know Mythic Plus was a little rocky in season 1 for a lot of players. I think by a mid-season it leveled off pretty well, and it's, to me, I think it's been a pretty good season overall. But everything I'm gleaning about season 2, it seems like Mythic Plus season 2 is going to be in a much better state. So hopefully for anybody that wants to hop in there and grab some of these feats, get these achievements done, whatever, hopefully everybody's finding a smoother path coming into season 2.
As a personal aside, I will say I'm slightly triggered by the name of the new affix because they removed Arcanic Pulsar from Boomkins and this expansion.
Oh,
and
no.
It made me very, very sad that they did that. Arcanic Pulsar was when you cast a certain amount of Star Surges, you activate your incarnation for 12 seconds, and you could essentially time out it's basically when you spent enough astral power, spent a certain amount of astral power, you trigger a incarnation. And so you had a lot of people who would track it and they could time it out. And there's a lot of things that trigger once you go into an incarnation. So you get like a big crit buff for a certain period of time and things like that. That it was a really fun mechanic to manage as a boomkin. So Pulsar to me has like a special place in my heart. And I'm like, oh, they're using it for an affix and they pulled it out of my talent tree for this expansion. Jerks. So,
well,
yeah.
Xal'atath is evil.
It's true.
So,
yeah. Her bargain was, we're going to take this from Boomkins and we're going to make sure shamans perform really well this expansion. All right.
Yeah, you got the short end of that stick.
Exactly, yep. New delves, the Side Street Sluice, as well as the Excavation Site 9. These are 2 new delves for you to explore with Bran, who is also going to have a tank build that you'll be able to enable for Bran. The delve variants that are out there, the delves that have new variants that are out there are Fungal Foley, Kriegwall's Rest, Earthcrawl Mines is going to have 2 new variants. The Dread Pit, Waterworks, Sinkhole, Nightfall Sanctum, Skittering Breach, Tackrathan Abyss, the Underkeep, and Spiral Weave. These are all going to have different variations for you to sort of explore and try out. Apparently there's, stuff about like getting Bran's hat back and things like that. So lots to explore there. The Delver's Journey is also getting extended so that you'll have a whole new Delver's Journey for you to dive into and level Bran up even higher and be able to get additional rewards. We have like the Delver's Gobtrotter schematic for a flamethrower, which is the flamethrower schematic from Reno Jackson and Dornegal. So I don't know if this is just like a weapon appearance, but we'll find out. The Delve Gobtrotter schematic for pipes, and this is essentially a schematic for Reno Jackson and Dornegal. So these might be things for your vehicle, most likely, is what these are happening for. The Gobtrotter thing that's going on there.
That would also mesh with the way it worked in season 1, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You unlocked appearances for the dirigible, so yeah, I assume it's kind of the same deal.
Exactly, and it's sort of appearances for things like that. You do get 2 restored coffer keys from Sir Finley Murgleton on the weekly. That'll happen halfway through your Delver's Journey, so that will come back, which I assume means you will lose the ability to do that when season 2 goes live. Or they'll add new keys, and these will be different named keys, but whatever it is. There's also the Delvobot 7001, which is something you can buy from Reno as well, farther down that train. And then your veteran 1 of 8 Warbound equipment isn't until one of the last 3 tiers of this, and that'll be for gearing up your alts if you're wanting to do something like that early on. It's a neat way to get them gear. And the discount for Sir Finley Murgleton is the second last thing. And the last thing is Nightfall Sanctum campsite for your warband from Reno Jackson. So if you want the Nightfall Sanctum campsite, that is finishing the Delver's Journey. So there's going to be some people out there cranking that out, I'm sure, to be sure they get the Nightfall Sanctum site as fast as they possibly can, because that'll be a big deal for a lot of folks that are out there.
Also, since season 1 started, when I was doing this and working my way up the journey, I couldn't tell where I was. There was just no way to like mouse over and see a number. They since patched that in, so that'll be nice this season. You can actually see like where you are along the journey. But yeah, I mean, this seems to be sort of the way that they're going with what the Delver's journey is and rewards. You know, you get stuff to customize the seasonal mount, and you get some veteran gear to toss around. You get some keys that you can just buy, although they're a little expensive in terms of undercoin. I love the putting the warband campsite screen in the system. It's because, you know, Delves, it's all about interior spaces, and there's a lot of variety, even the ones we have now, and you know, they'll continue to add them, I guess. So that could, you know, that's a cool way, I think, to tie it all together. But nothing there that I think is too like surprising in terms of how they laid the rewards out. But you know, obviously season 1 was the first time we ever saw Delves in the game, and season 2, you know, I think it definitely seems that a big motivation development wise in season 2 is to get people at the higher end and playing the higher end stuff, earning the higher end rewards, making the higher end more of an attractive thing to do, and not just having it be this vanity thing of like, oh, look, I did an 11 just because it was harder. So, you know, I think that should also help people move through the track faster, because you're only going to do more and harder delves potentially. That should be the goal there. So we'll see how it actually feels. That's a big question for me, because I played a ton of delves early in the season. Then about a third of the way through, I just kind of lost all my steam for it. You know, my main didn't need the stuff anymore. There was no real reason to engage with it, and it just didn't feel like a great time investment for the alts after a certain point.
Yeah, I get that. I get that entirely, that Delves for me fell off pretty hard once I was at a point where I just didn't need the rewards very much. It was actually so much so that when I was trying to gear my Evoker, I forgot just how good Delves can be at gearing a character. You just want to crank out some Delves for sure. You can get yourself some maps and whatnot, as well as just getting some really nice pieces of gear very early on. So they are a great way to do that. Although the map system is changing as well. One of the things happening inside season 2 is you only get one map per week, so you won't be hitting that like interesting farm where like a character is going in and getting 2 or 3 maps in a week and getting a huge power spike comparatively to other characters or other people. So that is a change that is happening as well. There are some titles being added. If you complete a tier 11 delve, you'll get yourself the High Explorer title. If you complete a Immortal Spelunker delve without any deaths on tier 11, you get yourself the Immortal Spelunker title. For essentially defeating the Underpin, which is sort of the big boss of the season, the Zekvir of this season. In his lair, you'll get yourself the Golden Gob propulsion rig as a mount. And then the defeating the Underpin on, obviously, the question, you get a reward as a title for the Real Deal. And so they've moved that mount up to be the easierly accessible thing. You'll notice inside of that. However, the Let Me Solo Him version of this, which is defeat Underpin in his lair without any players in your party, get yourself the golden version of that mount. So similarly to our shadow version of the mount, you get a golden version this go around. So something that folks can certainly look at if that's something they're keen on doing. As far as PvP goes, I'm not going to dive too deep into the PvP stuff because it's everything you'd normally assume it is. There's a new arena coming in, which is Cage of Carnage, which is the Demolition Dome that I'm looking forward to seeing some people compete in and seeing what that space looks like. There's obviously going to be new rewards, and the new rewards are like new mounts and titles and things associated with it, which I'm sure if you're a PvP player, you're diving in to be like, hey, what does my class armor look like? And, you know, what title do I want to get towards to be able to unlock the more prestigious things that I want to unlock? Because all of those things still exist. There is still obviously like a Hero of the Alliance and Hero of the Horde, 0.5% in rated battlegrounds and 0.1% for prized Marshal and prized Warlord inside of rated battlegrounds, that kind of stuff. All those still exist. That's still all attached. The new world boss is the Gobfather. We mentioned this last week, so be sure you're checking out when that happens. We would figure it'd be first week of season 2, but you never know, so we'll have to find out what this rotation ends up looking like and where he sort of settles in. But there are chest pieces, legs, waists, and feet, and a neck off of the Godfather. So there is some potential here for getting some catalyzed pieces for your tier set. So certainly a worthwhile thing to try and knock out and get early on in the season. Season 2 meta achievements. Yes, there is a meta achievement for Season 2 called Master Blaster, which is accomplish one of the following things. This is what got us our essentially our heroic piece of tier last go around. This is getting a 1600 plus PvP rating, or a 2000 plus Mythic plus rating, or defeating Gallywix inside the heroic or mythic difficulty of the raid. And Dress to the Mines is another achievement that's out there, which is essentially a completing the following achievements or feats of strength listed below. And that's Mythic, Chrome King Gallywix, War Within, Keystone Hero Season 2, Elite, the War Within Season 2 as well. All those combined will get you essentially a special meta achievement for completing those things before the end of the season. This is similar to the end of BFA, when you had to get like Gladiator in PvP while also doing something with your neck, while also clearing the mythic raid, while also doing this, and you got this big reward. It's a similar kind of concept. So you could see some people diving into PvP and pushing up the keystones in Mythic Plus to try and get this meta reward done as well. So it's always neat when they choose to do something like that for folks. It is a motivator for folks who are enjoying the content. You have to be enjoying the content, though, because otherwise this is a
Right.
grind for sure.
Otherwise, you're not going to be enjoying much of what you're doing at all. I guess one thing to point out with the metas is like there are 3 different conditions that will grant you Master Blaster or Dress to the Mines. And each, when you complete the achievement initially, you will get a Catalyst charge. But you can't do like 2000 Mythic rating and 1600 rated PvP rating and then get 2 Catalyst charges.
Yeah, no, it's the first one you accomplish.
Yeah. Like once you complete it, you've completed the achievement and now you have the reward.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. They tried to clean up the wording, but the wording on anything there's too many ways to read anything that they write in the in-game text regardless, because they give you a list of things and then it gets confusing. So, just keep that in mind, that you can't do that like multiple times. For Dress to the Mines, I guess you just get the cosmetic item, so it's not like you would get that more than once anyway. But don't be sad, I guess, if you get your 2000 mythic rating and then you defeat Gallywix and you're like, why didn't I get another charge? Well, you don't get more than one charge from the system.
Yeah, it's the first one you get. It's their way of rewarding you for accomplishing a feat for sure. Okay, Warcraft short story, The Tipping Point. This is a little story that came out that says, long before Reznik the Shiv came to Stormwind, he was the bloody fist of the Cragslager cartel, or Crackslager cartel. Don't kill me. I understand that it's a cartel and I messed up their name. I'm sorry. But when his grim work led to cross daggers with the Alliance spy, Reznik was forced to look back on a lifetime of brutality he carved out of the Undermine, and the future laid before him. Join Matthias Shaw for a special fireside telling of our newest short story, The Tipping Point, written by Andrew Robinson, illustrated by Matt Hubble, and narrated by John Bellman as Matthias Shaw. So yeah, if you're looking for a short story, it is there and out there for folks to check out if you're looking to do it. I haven't checked it out yet.
Cool.
I want to though.
I haven't either.
I like storytelling.
I'm a little behind on I finally got the hardcover edition of the prequel short stories that came out over the summer. It was like it got delayed, and then like my copy didn't ship on time.
Yeah.
So I got it a couple weeks ago, but I didn't start reading it yet. And I think this is part of a new series that they're going to do for this patch, which is cool to see them. Usually they only do publishing like this for a new expansion. So it's cool to see them add more fiction, out of game fiction into the schedule outside of an expansion release cycle. And I think this is going to be part of a new short story collection, which I think is that, I'll have my eye on that. And hopefully I'll have the current one read by the time that comes out. But it's cool. It's cool to see this come in. We're used to every 2 years we get a little bit of, either like a comic or like an audio drama or a PDF or something. So this is a bit more, there's a bit more volume on that than we've had in recent years. So I like it. I think the story of the Warcraft universe is way too broad to tell through the game, and having these other outlets to tell the story, to me, I think they do a better job of that stuff outside the game most of the time.
The game is serving
it's serving a different purpose, right? And it's like there's specific kind of like stories you could tell through the gameplay, but when you really wanted to get into a character's head or something, like the game doesn't do that.
No.
You are the character that you're in the head of when you're playing the game. So creating the big epic moments, the Dalaran thing at the beginning of War Within, that's what the game is really good at, right? But finding out what's going on with like the cloak and dagger stuff behind the scenes, that's better served for something like this.
Yeah, I would just say in general, the game is not well served outside of cinematics at telling that sort of story. I agree. I think often it's great at telling very short snippet stories about an individual who you may or may not encounter again inside the world somewhere else. They can tell really neat little stories, but I find the big overarching stuff often gets chopped up too much with too much time in between them to tell the story really well for folks. So this is a 50-minute audio piece if you want to listen to it. So it's on YouTube, and you can obviously links in the show notes. But it is 50 minutes long, so you buckle up for story time, definitely. All right, this is a Twitch drop alert for folks who are curious. There is going to be a Twitch drop going on for the next month from February 25th until March 25th. You can get yourself the Clocker Spaniel, which is the blue version of the sort of clockwork spaniels that are in the game right now off of the trading post. So if you are someone who wants to watch a stream to earn this Twitch drop, you have to watch 4 hours of World of Warcraft content to earn these Twitch drops. And it's any time in the month between February 25th and March 25th. And you will get yourself you have to link your Twitch account and all that. Obviously, it'll walk you through the instructions when you're trying to do it on Twitch, so that's not too hard. But you'll get yourself the blue Clocker Spaniel pet if that's something you're looking to get.
It's great. It's just the best one. I love the clockwork dogs anyway. I think they were great additions to the trading post last month. I think the blue one is just more visually appealing than the gold and green one. So I'm glad they're doing another variant of it. And man, you get a whole month here, and it's going to be a busy month for WoW on Twitch with patch and season 2 spinning up. So this will probably be pretty easy for a lot of people to get. I'll probably stream some patch this week myself, just to check out the new outdoor stuff and hang out and give people a chance to get some progress on their drops. This has nothing to do with the game or the reward here, but something ominous in this announcement is the start time is February 25th, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. The end time is March 25th, 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Oh no, the bane of our existence, daylight savings time, returns in about a month.
True. That's true.
So, I don't know when exactly it starts, but by the time this is over, we'll be on the other side of daylight savings in North America, and I'm not interested in that. So that's unfortunate. But hey, the pet's really cool, and I'll throw the stream up and I'll dish out some Clocker Spaniels. The name of the thing is great too. Talk the Clocker Spaniel. I mean, bravo, whoever named this thing.
For those who are curious, it's March 9th is daylight savings. That's the rollover. So
oh man, we got like 2 weeks.
Get ready for March 9th to happen there. Okay. All right. With that, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. I'd like to take a moment to shout out Alianas, Arajian, Bradley, Dustin, James, Kapawi, Cobra, Max, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for all that you give towards the show, as well as all of our patrons, including our newest patron, Stefan W. Thank you so much for hopping in and supporting the show. This has been a great year for World of Warcraft, and it's been a great year so far for TSE. So thank you so much. You can find our Patreon over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. And we're looking forward to having more patrons hop in there and having people support the show. And thank you so much, all past and present patrons. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for your support of the show over the many long years we've been at this. We couldn't keep it going without you. So thank you for chipping in and helping us keep the show on schedule, help us keep the archives online for people to find and enjoy. And we appreciate you. And like I said, we can do without you.
Yeah. Another great way to support the show is leave us those reviews over on your iTunes, your Apple Podcast. They really help out our show and raise us up those charts. We'll get back into reading some of those in a bit. We just need to finalize some of the deals on which software we're using, as well as I need to get my brain out of bargaining, which will be a couple weeks away, and then we'll be back and dealing with a lot of show stuff, which will be good.
Again, apologies if you've been leaving international reviews. I just have no easy way to find them for the last 2 months, so we'll catch up on them some point when we can. Right now, I'm kind of in the dark on those.
But we still appreciate them. Please do leave them, and we will catch up on them. We know where we stopped, so obviously we'll grab everything from there and start getting them through. That wraps up episode 672 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone or on Blue Sky, The Starting Zone over .bsky .social. That's what it is. And you can also join our Discord, thestartingzone.com/Discord. You can hop in there and chat with folks there. If you want to get your hands on some TSC gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/The Starting Zone. You can check out designs on shirts and mugs and stickers, that kind of fun stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
My best place to find me, you can find me over on Twitter or over on Blue Sky. Twitter is over at Shieldwald, and Blue Sky is jlucas.bsky.social. So you can come say hi over there. I mostly post stuff on Blue Sky, but I do check both sites regularly. You can say hi, message me, whatever you want to do. Also, you can find video channels over at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. I haven't, like I've been saying, I haven't been streaming much, but I probably am going to fire up the stream this week just on Twitch. I don't want people watching on YouTube and not getting their doggos. So we'll get something going for Patch over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald. You come hang out and work on your drops.
If you're trying to find me, you can find me over on Twitter at Spencer_Downey or over on Blue Sky at SpencerHD.bsky.social. That is the one I primarily use now. I don't post to Twitter all that often. But I don't check it that often anymore. It's primarily Blue Sky that I'm interacting with. And you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD or over on YouTube at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.